Before I dive into everything, I want to take you back to the beginning. Because before any of the madness started, before the lies, before the betrayal, there was just me and Emily. And we were good. Genuinely good. We met in the most unremarkable way possible, at a grocery store of all places. I had just gotten out of a long relationship and wasn't really looking for anything. I was standing in front of the coffee section, debating whether to be adventurous or just stick to my usual dark roast, when she walked up and made some offhand comment about how only psychopaths drink instant coffee. I laughed, said I was this close to grabbing one, and just like that we were talking. She was sharp, confident, funny in that quick, dry way that gets under your skin and stays there. We ended up standing in that aisle for 20 minutes. When she finally left, I remember thinking about her for the rest of the day. 2 days later, I ran into her again in the same store. She joked that I was stalking her. I said maybe I was. Our first real date was the following weekend. Coffee turned into dinner, which turned into walking around the city until midnight. We talked about everything and nothing. She told me she worked in marketing, and I told her about my job in IT. She admitted she was a terrible cook but made up for it with enthusiasm. I admitted I was a boring homebody, but secretly wished I could be more like her, outgoing and fearless. 2 years later, we were married. Nothing fancy, just a small ceremony at this old bed-and breakfast with ivy crawling up the walls. She wore this simple dress and didn't stop smiling once. I've never been good at big emotional speeches, but that day I told her, honestly, she made the world feel like a less lonely place. Our life together started slow and steady. We bought a 3-bedroom house in a quiet neighborhood not too far from where we both grew up. It's the kind of place where you know your neighbors by name, and the mailman waves when he drives past. I work from home now, mostly behind a screen troubleshooting software issues, and she still goes into the office most days, or she's out meeting clients. She thrives on people, and I thrive on peace and quiet. It somehow works. We have routines that make our life feel grounded. Wednesday night pasta. Saturday morning coffee runs. Sunday grocery trips together, full circle from where we started. I mow the lawn, she plants flowers she'll forget to water. I cook, she dances around the kitchen like she's in a music video. Our friends say we're opposites, but I think that's what makes us click. We've had our share of stress, career stuff, money stuff, the usual, but nothing that ever really shook us. I've always seen us as solid. Like we had our own rhythm no one else quite understood, but that worked perfectly for us. And if you'd asked me a year ago, I would have told you we were the kind of couple other people quietly envied. That's how it all started. Normal. Happy. The kind of love you feel lucky to have. After we settled into our home, life took on a kind of quiet rhythm. Not boring, just steady. Predictable in a way that felt safe. We didn't have kids, and while that was something we talked about early on, we both agreed we'd wait until the time felt right. And honestly, the time just never came. We got comfortable in our life, just the two of us. Emily's job kept her busy. She was always juggling a campaign or a pitch or organizing some big event. She loved it though, the chaos, the creativity, the adrenaline. Meanwhile, my work was quieter, mostly remote. I'm the guy who keeps things from breaking: servers, software, occasionally people's tempers. I liked being behind the scenes. I always have. Most days, I'd be home in my little corner office, headphones in, troubleshooting some system glitch for a client across the country. I'd take breaks to walk the dog, Lucy, a moody beagle with an attitude, and maybe get some yard work done or prep dinner. Emily would get home around 6 or 7, depending on the day, sometimes later if she had client dinners or networking events. She always texted me if she was running behind, usually with a picture of her cocktail or the weird appetizer she was trying. I never really minded. Our evenings were our time, though. Even if it was just an hour before bed, we made a habit of winding down together. Sometimes it was a glass of wine on the porch. Other times it was both of us half watching a series while scrolling through our phones. And sometimes we actually talked. Not just about work or errands, but real stuff, family, things we wanted to do, places we wanted to travel to someday. I think one of the things I loved most about our marriage was that we could sit in silence without it ever feeling awkward. We didn't travel much, not because we didn't want to, but because time just always got away from us. We'd talk about going to Italy or hiking in the Pacific Northwest, but then something would come up. A project at work. A family obligation. Life. We did manage a few weekend getaways, small mountain towns, coastal Airbnb cabins, and those always felt like resets for us. I'd unplug, Emily would sleep in, and by Sunday night we'd both feel like better versions of ourselves. My family loved her. My mom said she lit up a room. My sister thought she was stylish and clever. And Mark, my younger brother, well, he and Emily hit it off in that joking, sarcastic way people do when they both have sharp tongues. It never bothered me. If anything, I was happy my family and my wife meshed so well. That was important to me. Family's always been a big part of my life, even though we're not the overly emotional type. More teasing than hugging, more dry humor than heart-to-hearts. But we show up for each other, and that's always been enough. Sometimes, when I think back to those early years, I remember how often Emily used to reach for my hand, like she needed to feel me there. Whether we were walking down the street or just sitting at a restaurant, she'd find my hand. It was small, but it meant something. I think that's what made me believe we were solid. When someone chooses your hand, again and again, it doesn't feel like anything could really go wrong. Back then, I thought we were happy. People say the honeymoon phase ends after a couple of years. And maybe that's true in some ways. Your heart doesn't race just because they walk into the room, and you stop trying to impress each other with every little thing. But for us, what came after was something quieter and, in a way, more meaningful. We built a life, not flashy or dramatic, just stable. We figured out each other's habits, moods, little quirks. She learned not to talk to me until I'd had my first cup of coffee, and I learned to leave her alone when she was pacing the living room rehearsing a pitch out loud. We weren't perfect, but we worked well together. Money was always okay. Not great, not terrible. I had a solid job, and Emily was steadily climbing the ladder at her firm. We didn't spend a lot on ourselves. Emily liked nice things, sure, but she was smart about it. She'd hunt for deals or buy stuff secondhand and somehow still look like she walked out of a boutique. I handled the bills and savings, and we always kept each other in the loop about major purchases. Financial stress wasn't really something we fought about. What did we want for the future? At first, kids were a possibility. We talked about it in that abstract, maybe someday way. After a while, though, the conversation slowed down. It wasn't a painful thing, not like in the movies. There were no fights about it, no medical obstacles. I think we just quietly agreed that the life we had, the two of us, and later, Lucy, was full enough. Sometimes I wondered if Emily felt differently and just didn't say it, but if she did, she never let it show. We had friends, some mutual, some separate. I had a small group of guys I'd known since college, and we'd meet up for drinks now and then, or watch games. Emily was more social, more involved. She had her girls' nights and industry networking events, and I always encouraged her to go. She thrived in social settings. She was the type of person who could meet someone once and be invited to their wedding 6 months later. It used to blow my mind. One thing that always stood out was how independent she was. Not in a distant way, but she didn't need me to feel complete. She had her own friends, her own ambitions, her own sense of identity. And I like that. I never wanted someone to lean on me so hard that they lost themselves. And she never did. We still had fun, too. Little things. Spontaneous late-night drives for milkshakes. Dancing in the kitchen to music from her phone. Impromptu road trips when we both had a Friday off. She had this ability to turn even boring weekends into something memorable, and I'd always go along with it, even if I acted like I wasn't thrilled. She'd call me grump and tease me until I gave in. Looking back, it's easy to romanticize it all. But the truth is, it was good. Not perfect, but real. We laughed more than we argued. We had inside jokes that still make me smile when I think about them. There were nights I'd wake up and find her curled up on my side of the bed, holding on to my pillow, like she missed me even in her sleep. I held on to those moments. I still do. Because for a long time, those memories were what I believed our marriage was built on. I don't think there's ever one moment when you realize something's wrong. It's not like a movie where you walk in and catch them red-handed. It's slower than that. Quieter. It starts with little things, so small you almost feel ridiculous for noticing them. The first time I felt it, I ignored it. I think most people do. You don't want to believe the person you love could be anything other than what you've always known. It started when Emily's schedule began changing. Nothing drastic, just small shifts. She started working later. A few more client dinners than usual. More overnight trips for strategy meetings or team-building weekends. At first, I didn't question it. I mean, it's not like she hadn't always been ambitious. Her job had always demanded a lot from her, and she'd always handled it with grace. But something about the way she explained it started to feel rehearsed. One Friday night, she came home later than usual, around 10:30, saying she'd been at a client dinner that ran long. She smelled like wine and something floral I didn't recognize. not her usual perfume. I asked how the dinner went, and she told me about a new client who was high maintenance but worth the billing rate. She smiled while she talked, but it didn't feel the same. Her energy was off. She didn't ask me how my day was, didn't really seem interested in anything beyond pouring herself a second glass and scrolling through her phone. That night, she fell asleep with her back to me. I stared at the ceiling and tried to shake the feeling that something had shifted. Over the next couple of weeks, it only got worse. She was on her phone more often, but not in the usual mindless way. She was careful now, angling the screen away, locking it faster, turning off previews. And when I asked her about it, she brushed it off with a laugh. Work stuff, babe. Boring. You wouldn't care. But I did care. Because the woman I married used to share everything with me. She used to read her texts out loud, screenshot her group chats just to make me laugh. Now it felt like she was keeping something from me. Then came the night I saw her phone light up while it was charging in the kitchen. I wasn't snooping. I was just getting a glass of water. A message popped up, and all I caught was a name I didn't recognize and a preview that said, "You looked amazing tonight." I stood there, glass in hand, and stared at the screen until it went dark again. I didn't ask her about it. I don't know why. Maybe I didn't want to start a fight. Or maybe I was afraid of what I already knew in my gut. Instead, I started paying more attention to the way she was suddenly putting more effort into her appearance on days she used to dress down, to how she started guarding her phone like it held state secrets, to the way her laughter sounded a little too forced when she talked about her day, like she was reading lines from a script. But the moment that really rattled me came one Saturday morning. We were getting ready to head to my parents' house, nothing fancy, just a backyard lunch. I was in the bedroom putting on a clean shirt when I heard her on the phone in the other room. I don't think she knew I was within earshot. Her voice was low and quick. I couldn't hear every word, but I caught enough. She said something like, "Don't be stupid. I can't talk right now. He's here." That stopped me in my tracks. When I walked into the room a few seconds later, she jumped like I'd snuck up on her. She ended the call immediately and smiled at me in that overly casual way people do when they're pretending nothing just happened. "Just work," she said. "Sorry, my team is driving me crazy." I nodded, but my stomach was in knots. I didn't say anything in the car. I didn't say anything at my parents'. But the whole time, my mind was spinning. I told myself I was overthinking, that work was stressful, and that she had every right to have a life outside of me. But deep down, I knew. Something was happening. Something I wasn't ready to face. By the time summer rolled around, I had the kind of restlessness I couldn't shake. It wasn't just about Emily anymore. It was this low hum in my chest, like something was vibrating just out of tune in our lives, and I couldn't fix it no matter what I did. I tried to be patient. I told myself marriages go through phases, that sometimes people pull away for reasons that have nothing to do with anyone else. Work stress, hormones, just being tired. All of it seemed reasonable. But when I looked at her lately, she felt distant. Not angry, not cold, just somewhere else. One Saturday morning, I made her coffee the way she likes it, oat milk, 1 sugar, a little cinnamon on top, and brought it to her in bed like I used to. She smiled, said thank you, even kissed my cheek, but there was something hollow in the way she took the cup. She stared at it like it was a stranger's drink. Later that day, I suggested we go to that little antique bookstore she loves. It was something we hadn't done in months. She paused for a second too long before saying, "Sure, if we have time." That hesitation stung more than I wanted to admit. We used to go there all the time. It was our thing. She'd wander the aisles and pick out something weird, and I'd pretend I wasn't enjoying myself just to hear her laugh. We didn't end up going. She said she had to catch up on work emails. I didn't push back. I just nodded and went for a walk around the neighborhood instead. That's when I started asking myself questions I didn't want to answer. Why doesn't she want to spend time with me anymore? Why is she always somewhere else, even when she's right next to me? And why, lately, does it feel like I'm living with a version of her that's only half present? We still had dinner together most nights, but even that felt like a formality. She was quieter. I'd ask about her day, and she'd give me the headlines, meetings, deadlines, traffic. No stories. No color. Sometimes I'd catch her glancing at her phone under the table, and when I asked who it was, she'd say, "Just work again," without even checking. There was one night that stuck with me more than I expected. We were watching a movie on the couch, something light, forgettable. She leaned her head on my shoulder, and for a moment I felt that familiar weight of her presence, like everything was okay. But then her phone buzzed, and she sat up instantly, like she'd just remembered she was supposed to be somewhere else. She grabbed her phone, muttered something about needing to reply to a colleague, and walked into the kitchen. I stayed on the couch, staring at the pause screen. My shoulders still felt warm from where her head had been. And suddenly, I just felt alone. I know how this sounds. Maybe we were just drifting. Maybe she was going through something and didn't know how to say it. People change. Marriages evolve. I get that. But what I couldn't stop thinking about, what kept looping in my mind like a broken record, was how often her phone seemed to take priority over me. How much effort she seemed to put into being on for everyone else, and how little she gave when it was just the two of us. I thought about talking to her. I rehearsed it in my head more than once. Are you okay? Are we okay? But I never said it. I was afraid of the answer. Or maybe I was afraid she'd lie to me with a smile, and I wouldn't be able to tell the difference. So instead, I waited. I watched. I hoped it was just a phase. And all the while, that uneasy feeling kept growing. I started staying up later than usual. Not for any particular reason, just lying in bed, staring at the ceiling while Emily slept beside me. Or, more often lately, went to bed long after I did. It had become a pattern. I'd be brushing my teeth, shutting off the lights, winding down for the night. She'd be on the couch with her laptop or scrolling through her phone, saying she needed a bit more time to unwind. I'd wake up around 2 a.m. and find her side of the bed empty or barely warm, like she'd slipped in just minutes before. I told myself it wasn't that unusual. Some people are night owls. But she hadn't always been. We used to go to bed at the same time. Every night. We used to lie there and talk in the dark about plans, dreams, nothing at all. That quiet closeness, it had vanished without either of us saying a word. One night, I got up for water around 1 a.m. and passed through the living room. She wasn't there. The kitchen light was on, but the room was empty. Her phone was sitting on the counter, buzzing every few seconds. I didn't touch it. I didn't look. I couldn't. She came out of the guest bathroom a few moments later and jumped when she saw me. "Did I wake you?" she asked quickly. I said no, just thirsty. She smiled and brushed past me with a quick, "Go back to sleep, babe." But my stomach was in knots the rest of the night. The next day, I tried to bring it up casually. I asked if everything was okay. Not between us, just in general. Work, stress, health, anything. She looked surprised and said, "Yeah, why wouldn't it be?" I shrugged. "You just seemed a little distracted lately." Her reply was too quick, too defensive. "Well, I've got a lot going on. It's not personal." Not personal. That stuck with me. I hadn't asked if it was personal. That weekend, we went to dinner with my family. It was Mark's birthday, my younger brother. Just a casual get-together, nothing fancy. My parents, my sister, Mark, and his new girlfriend, his third in 2 years, but probably the nicest one so far. Emily was friendly, social, like she always was around them. She laughed at my dad's awful jokes, helped my mom in the kitchen, and complimented Mark's girlfriend's earrings like they were best friends already. On the surface, it looked like everything was fine, like she was still the same person everyone knew and loved. But I kept catching these small moments. Like when she stood a little too close to Mark while they were joking about some childhood memory. Or when she laughed a little too hard at something he said, something barely funny. Or the way her eyes lingered on him when he wasn't looking. It was probably nothing. Maybe I was being paranoid. But once a thought like that takes root, it's hard to pull it out. The worst part? I hated myself for even thinking it. Mark and I aren't best friends or anything. We're brothers, close in the way siblings are by default, not by effort. But I'd never once thought of him as a threat. And Emily had always treated him like family. Still, something about that night gnawed at me. I couldn't name it, couldn't explain it. But I didn't feel like myself afterward. Like I was the only one in the room who wasn't in on some inside joke. Later that night, when we got home, I asked her if she had a good time. She was already halfway through taking off her makeup. "Yeah, it was nice. I miss your family sometimes." I nodded and didn't say anything else. She didn't ask me how I felt. Didn't notice that I was unusually quiet. And maybe that was the part that hurt the most. Because she always used to notice. Now, she barely looked up. I think the worst part of suspicion is that it makes you question yourself before you ever question the other person. That slow erosion of certainty, it doesn't just eat away at the relationship. It eats away at who you believe you are. I used to think of myself as pretty grounded. I wasn't the jealous type. I never checked her phone, never kept tabs on where she was or who she was with. I trusted her. I built my world around that trust, and I never thought I'd need to inspect its foundation. But somewhere between that family dinner and the following week, I found myself second-guessing almost everything. Emily was more upbeat than usual after that night. She was humming in the mornings again, taking extra care with her hair, smiling at her phone like it was telling her secrets. She started buying new clothes, subtle things, but noticeable if you were paying attention. A few new blouses that were more form-fitting than what she usually wore to the office. Lipstick she hadn't worn in years. And when I commented on it, trying to keep my tone light, she laughed and said, "What? I can't treat myself once in a while?" Of course she could. But I couldn't shake the feeling that her reflection had shifted somehow. Like she was preparing herself for someone, not me, but someone else's gaze. I tried to give her space. I told myself people go through phases. Maybe she was just trying to feel like herself again, whatever that meant. I didn't want to smother her. I didn't want to be that husband, the one who polices every change and calls it suspicion. So I gave her the benefit of the doubt. Again and again. But I started noticing how quiet our house had become. Not literally, there was still music playing from her phone while she got ready, the buzz of her work calls, the sound of life moving on, but there was a silence between us. That subtle lack of connection. The absence of the small things, her head on my shoulder while we watched TV, her hand finding mine without thinking, her voice calling me to the kitchen just to taste something she was cooking. Those quiet gestures had faded without warning. And once they were gone, I realized how much they had anchored me. One night, I got home a little later than usual. Nothing dramatic. I just stayed out for a drink with an old friend I hadn't seen in months. When I walked through the door, the house was dim, warm, quiet. Emily was on the couch in her robe, hair damp from a shower, wine glass in hand. She looked surprised to see me, like she'd already written the evening in her mind without me in it. "I thought you were working late," she said, her tone neutral. I told her I'd grabbed a beer after work, didn't think it was a big deal. She didn't say much, just turned her eyes back to her phone, her thumb scrolling aimlessly. I asked her if she wanted to watch something together. She shook her head. "I'm exhausted," she murmured, already standing, already walking away. I stood there for a minute in the quiet, holding my keys in one hand and my coat in the other, and I realized I hadn't kissed her in 2 days. Not even a peck on the cheek. I couldn't remember the last time we'd touched. That night, I didn't sleep well. I laid there staring at the ceiling, listening to the soft rhythm of her breath beside me, and wondered how you could feel so far away from someone who was inches from your body. I turned toward her, hoping some part of her would respond, reach out in her sleep, roll into my space like she used to. But she didn't. She stayed curled on her side, facing away from me, and didn't move all night. The next morning, I asked her if she wanted to do something together over the weekend. A hike, maybe, or dinner somewhere new. She smiled without looking up from her phone and said she'd already made plans with her friend Nicole, some kind of spa day, she added. "You should do something for yourself too," she said, already walking out of the room. The door closed behind her like a full stop at the end of a sentence. I sat there, coffee cooling in my hand, and stared at the space she just left. I couldn't explain it. Nothing was technically wrong. No arguments. No outbursts. Just this steady, relentless sense of being slowly erased from the picture. Like I was being replaced, and no one had bothered to tell me. And still, I didn't say anything. I didn't accuse. I didn't pry. But in the quiet corners of my mind, a thought I didn't want to admit to was starting to form. What if I was already gone? I don't think you ever imagine the moment your life breaks open will happen at your mother's house, in the middle of a backyard barbecue. It was one of those early fall afternoons, sun just starting to mellow, air crisp but not cold, the kind of day that makes you nostalgic before it's even over. My mom had gone all out. She always does. The yard was strung with lights, tables set with little pumpkins, all her kids and grandkids gathered around like it was some Norman Rockwell painting. If you'd looked at me from across the lawn, you'd have thought I was right in the center of it all. I wasn't. Emily was there too, of course. She wore this rust-colored dress I'd never seen before. She looked good, beautiful, even, but somehow not mine. Lately she'd started feeling like someone I had to keep reintroducing myself to. She floated between conversations like she'd trained for it, laughing a little too loudly, her wine glass never empty. My brother, Mark, arrived late. When he walked in, Emily spotted him first. I saw the way her whole face lit up. Not the way you light up for a brother-in-law. That was the first hit. But I told myself I was imagining things. Again, I'd gotten too used to swallowing doubts. I helped my dad move a table, got caught up talking to my cousin's husband about car repairs. I tried to blend back into the hum of the afternoon. At some point, I lost track of Emily. I didn't think much of it. She was probably inside grabbing something for my mom or cornered in conversation with one of my aunts. I headed into the house to use the bathroom, and as I passed the hallway that leads to the den, I heard voices. Familiar ones. Female. My mom, my sister, and Emily. I wasn't trying to listen. I stopped walking because I heard my name. He's just so checked out all the time, Emily was saying. Her voice was tight but trying to sound casual, like she was explaining something she was already tired of explaining. I don't even think he notices when I'm in the room half the time. I mean, God, how long is someone supposed to keep pretending? There was a silence. Then my sister's voice, low and unsurprised. It's not your fault. You've tried. Honestly, I've always said you could do better. Then my mother chimed in. Mark's been there for you in ways he never was. You deserve to be seen. I went cold. Completely, utterly cold. Like the sound had left the air. Emily laughed. Soft. Nervous. It just happened. I didn't plan it. But he makes me feel like I'm madder again. With Mark, I don't have to explain myself. Mark. I felt something in me drop. Not like falling, but like it let go. Something that had been hanging on by threads finally gave up. I stood there for a few seconds, heart thudding in my throat. Their voices kept going, but I don't remember what was said after that. It all blurred into this strange, hollow ringing in my ears. I stepped back down the hallway, as quiet as I could, then out the side door and into the front yard. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't go looking for her. I didn't give them the satisfaction of seeing my face. I just walked to my car, got in, and drove. There was no panic. No screaming. Just this numb, eerie calm. The kind you feel right before a storm breaks. By the time I pulled into our driveway, I already knew what I was going to do. I unlocked the front door, went inside, and stood in the middle of our living room, our home, and realized it had already stopped feeling like mine. She didn't know I'd left the party. She didn't know I'd hurt her. But she would know soon enough. I walked over to the door, stared at it for a moment, and then made the call. Hey, I said to my brother. My real brother. Not Mark. You still have that set of tools in your truck? I need to change a lock. I didn't cry. Not on the drive home. Not when I stepped back into the house. Not when I sat down in the dark and let everything catch up to me like a wave curling overhead. I didn't even feel anger, not in the way I expected. What I felt was something colder, heavier. Final. The pain was there, don't get me wrong. But it had already hardened into something more functional. A kind of brutal clarity. I didn't need to hear another word from her. I didn't want explanations or justifications or some weak apology wrapped in regret. I didn't need to see the guilt in her face or listen to her promise that it wasn't what it sounded like. It was exactly what it sounded like. She had been sleeping with my brother, and not just behind my back, but with the knowledge and support of my own family. My mother, my sister, all nodding along like she was doing the brave thing by betraying me. Like my failure to entertain her was grounds for erasure. By the time I changed the lock, my hands were steady. My real brother, Tom, stood at the door, watching me work in silence. He didn't ask what happened. He just handed me the tools when I needed them and stayed out of the way. That's the kind of sibling he is. The kind who shows up when it matters. When it was done, I thanked him. He looked at me for a moment and said, "You okay?" I wanted to say yes. I wanted to say something casual, something dry. But I just nodded once. That was all I could manage. She got home around 10. I was sitting in the living room, lights off. I didn't want to see her face. I didn't want the drama of her fumbling for excuses. I just wanted her gone. I heard the key go into the lock. Then I heard the rattle when it didn't turn. Another try. Then knocking. Babe. Her voice was muffled, confused. Why won't the door open? I stayed quiet. More knocking. Louder this time. Then a pause, followed by her voice again, sharper now. Is something wrong with the lock? I waited until she stopped trying before I got up, walked to the door, and opened it just a crack. Her eyes widened when she saw me. What the hell is going on? She asked, her voice part confusion, part irritation. You don't live here anymore, I said calmly. Her mouth opened like she was about to protest, but I didn't give her the space. I heard you today. At the party. You, my mother, my sister, and Mark. That shut her up. For the first time, I saw her hesitate, really hesitate. Her mouth opened again, then closed. She looked small. Caught. Embarrassed, maybe, but not sorry. Not really. I could have unleashed everything I was feeling in that moment. I could have yelled. Accused. Demanded answers. But I didn't. I'd done enough absorbing. I didn't want anything else from her, not her pain, not her remorse, not even her voice. I packed your things, I said. They're in the garage. You can come get them tomorrow. I won't be here. Are you serious? She asked, blinking. You're not even going to talk to me? I don't need to, I said. You made your choice. I'm just following through. Her face twisted, maybe into a frown, maybe into something meaner, but I closed the door before I had to read it. Locked it again. Turned off the porch light. I didn't sleep that night, but I didn't lie in bed either. I stayed on the couch, staring at the ceiling, listening to the silence like it was telling me something. And it was, you're free. The next morning, I shut off my phone. No texts. No calls. I reached out to my job, told them I needed time off, and sent a message to my bank about moving our joint accounts into my name alone. I didn't contact my mother. I didn't answer my sister's text. I didn't so much as look at Mark's name in my call log. As far as I was concerned, they no longer existed. If they could sit there nodding while my wife gushed about how much better my own brother was than me, then they were never my family to begin with. I didn't announce anything. I didn't tell anyone what happened. I just removed myself. Quietly. Completely. And for the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe again. The first morning I woke up alone, truly alone, not just sharing space with someone who had emotionally vanished. It felt oddly peaceful. There was no crashing silence, no pit in my stomach. Just stillness. I made my coffee, fed the dog, sat on the back porch as the sun rose, and realized how much noise I had been living in without even recognizing it. All those small lies, all those careful glances and guarded silences, they weigh on you. You carry them without noticing, like invisible bricks in your chest. And suddenly, without warning, the load is gone. Not because the pain has vanished, but because the person holding it there has. I didn't go back to that house for a while. I stayed with Tom for a bit, my real brother, the one who showed up when I didn't even have to ask. We didn't talk about what happened much. He just gave me space and asked how I liked my eggs in the morning. Sometimes that's all you need. A clean towel. Coffee that's already brewing. The quiet understanding that someone's in your corner, no matter how ugly it gets. I started going back to the gym. Nothing dramatic, just light workouts, more for the rhythm than the result. I needed something that reminded me of progress, even if it was just sweat and sore muscles. I got back to work too. I buried myself in small projects, helped my team where I could, answered emails like nothing had happened. It was easier than expected, maybe because pain doesn't follow you so loudly when your hands are busy. But at night, it still hit. That quiet hour before bed when everything goes still and your mind has nowhere else to hide. I'd lie on the couch, stare at the ceiling fan spinning above me, and think about everything I'd ignored. All the signs, all the small choices that led me to that hallway, to that overheard conversation, to that front door that wouldn't open for her anymore. I felt stupid. I felt angry. And more than anything, I felt free. That part surprised me the most. I thought it would take longer. But I didn't miss her. I missed the version of her I thought was real. And once I let that go, the rest got easier. Eventually, I found a small apartment on the edge of town. Nothing fancy, just clean, quiet, and mine. I moved in on a rainy Tuesday with a rented truck and a playlist of old songs that somehow made me feel okay again. I left most of our shared furniture behind. Didn't want it. Didn't need the memories that clung to the cushions and curtains. I bought new things, slowly, deliberately. A cheap wooden table. A reading chair I actually liked. Plates that didn't match hers. Everything felt like a decision made with intention. That was new for me. Then one day, I met someone. Not on purpose. I wasn't looking. I didn't even realize it was happening until I found myself laughing with her over something dumb. A coffee spill, I think. Her name was Claire. She worked at the bookstore I used to go to with Emily, which should have felt ironic. But instead it just felt right. She was kind without trying to impress. Warm in a way that didn't demand anything from me. We talked about books, music, growing up in quiet houses. Nothing heavy, just honest. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was hiding part of myself. We started seeing each other casually. No labels, no pressure. Just walks, coffee, occasional dinners that felt more like conversation than performance. I didn't tell her everything at first. How could I? I wasn't even done unpacking it myself. But she never asked for more than I could give. And that patience healed something in me. One night, after she left, I stood in my doorway and just breathed for a long while. The apartment smelled like her perfume, soft, clean, nothing like Emily's. And I realized I wasn't thinking about my ex-wife anymore. I wasn't wondering what she was doing or who she was with, or whether my mother still kept in touch with her. That whole chapter felt sealed. Not forgotten, but finished. I looked around my quiet, imperfect apartment. My home. My life. And for the first time since it all fell apart, I thought, maybe I'll be okay. It's been a few months now. Long enough for the dust to settle, long enough for the anger to cool into something quieter, like ash after a fire. I've moved forward, though I wouldn't say I've moved on. People say healing isn't linear. They're right. Some days, I don't think about her at all. Others, she shows up in my dreams like nothing ever happened, smiling, laughing, still mine. And I wake up disoriented, bitter, ashamed that even in my sleep I haven't entirely let her go. But then I get up, make coffee in a kitchen that doesn't have her fingerprints, and I remember, she's not a part of my life anymore. And I don't want her back. I never spoke to Mark, never confronted him, never gave him the fight he probably half expected. I just disappeared, changed my number, blocked his, blocked all of them. The silence was louder than any argument I could have had. Maybe that's why it hurt them more. Or maybe they don't care. Maybe they sit around my mother's table now, acting like I overreacted, like I should have been more understanding, like love just happens sometimes between the wrong people. I don't care anymore. Truly. I thought about writing a letter to my mother. One final message to explain why I've gone silent. I even started it a few times. But every version of it felt like I was trying to teach her a lesson, and that's not my job. She made her choice when she picked comfort over integrity, and I made mine when I walked away. Some relationships aren't worth fixing, even the ones that raised you. As for Emily, she tried to contact me once. Through a friend. Just a message. Can we talk? Just once. I didn't respond. What was left to say? Any version of that conversation would have just been about her guilt or her need for closure, and I've spent enough of my life giving her what she needed. It's not my job anymore. I still see Claire. We're not rushing anything. She knows I've been through a lot. We're building something slowly, honestly, without expectation. And maybe that's exactly what I needed, to love without urgency, to be loved without performance. Sometimes we just sit together and read. Other times we talk late into the night, sharing little pieces of our past like stones laid gently in each other's hands. She doesn't try to fix me. She doesn't ask me to forget. She just listens. That's enough. The other day, I passed the neighborhood where Emily and I used to live. I hadn't meant to be there. It was just the route the GPS took me. For a second, I thought about driving by the old house. Just for a glance. Just to see what the curtains looked like now, who was parked in the driveway. But I didn't. I turned the wheel and took the next left, back onto a road that was mine. This whole story, our story, started with a stranger at a grocery store, a smile over coffee beans. It ended with a door closing, a lock turning, and a man deciding he deserved better than the half-love he'd been handed. I'm not bitter. I'm not broken. I'm just done. And I'm still here. Still standing. Still moving forward. That, I think, is enough.